Hello, hello, hello. Greetings, everybody. Happy Monday. Woo! It's Monday. Is anybody else excited about Monday? I love Mondays because it's new beginnings. It's a new week. It means we're back in it, right? Sometimes the weekend is kind of like a time off, a time for us to go do our thing. And then Monday returns and it's like back to the real world. However, when we're living in alignment and we love our lives and we're doing our thing and we're living in purpose, then Monday becomes an awesome fucking day, right? So welcome. If you're new to this group space, welcome. I am Lindsay Carricarte-Jones, and I am a quantum soul evolution coach, and I help people tap into their freedom, call forth their soul purpose, and take quantum shifts into the versions of themselves who have it all. So we're going to have some fun today. So I highly encourage you. It's no matter if you are catching this as a replay, if you're joining me live, it's fine either way. And I'm just checking in the group because sometimes the computer doesn't show me the comments for some reason. So there's Jamie. Hello. Good morning. You're actually in my side of the world. So if you are catching this later as the replay, interact. Let me know that you're here. Tune in. Say hello. Let me know where you're watching from. I will come back and read all your comments and your questions. Bottom line of it is when you interact, you get more out of it, right? This isn't for me. This is for you because I am learning all kinds of new, crazy, cool stuff that I want to be sharing with you today. And what I want to share with you today is just a piece of some of the expansions and the knowings and the learnings that I have been playing around with. And Jamie, actually, you're going to love this because you're at Dr. Joe Dispenza's event right now in Canada, or on the border of Niagara Falls and New York and Canada. And this is really in line with the stuff that he does. So for any of you who are here in the group as well, if you are familiar with Joe Dispenza's work, Dr. Joe Dispenza, if you're into any of his books or his meditations, you will love this because it really aligns nicely. And I have been playing around with his stuff as well, implementing some of his teachings and reading his books. And it's just blasting the stuff that I already know into a whole new level. It's like a whole new fucking stratosphere. It's like a whole new dimension. Let's just be real, right? It's a whole new universe. And what I'm finding is that I play around with this stuff and I explore more deeply into Dispenza's teachings. My own understandings are rapidly expanding. And that's the thing, isn't it? So we're going to be talking a little bit about what exactly I'm talking about when I'm talking about 3D and 4D and 5D. What does that even mean? And why is that always expanding? Ooh. And to do that, what I would like to do is share a story with you all first, if that's okay. And those of you that are jumping on live, say hello. Let me know you're here. Let me know how you are. Let me know if you're excited that it's Monday. Interact, right? Ask questions. Let me know you're alive. So a few years back, it was about 6 years ago, I found myself pretty much at the depths of my own darkness. Like I had burned my life to the ground. Those of you that know my story, you've heard a lot of this before, right? So you know that I was struggling with addiction for most of my life. I struggled with depression and anxiety. I had PTSD. I had cancer when I was 27. Like it was a shit show, right? And what happened about 6 years ago is that out of nowhere, it was like I shifted into a version of myself that was no longer willing to play the game of addiction. And I was no longer willing to keep towing that line of going back and forth and going in and out, right? And I had been someone who'd been going in and out for like 15 years. I had been struggling with this back and forth thing with all of my stuff, whether it was the addiction, whether it was depression, whether it was anxiety, because those things weren't my problem. And this isn't a live about those things, right? I'm just using them to illustrate where I quantum shifted from, because it was literally like overnight. I went from being this person who wouldn't accept help, right? I wouldn't accept guidance. I wouldn't try it. Oh, there's your comments. So I wasn't seeing your comments on the video. I don't know why my computer's doing that. I'm seeing them on your phone. Hi, Carla. Thank you for commenting. Happy Monday. And hi, everybody else who's joining. So I'm going to pop my phone up there. So if you guys are commenting, I can see them. I'm on my computer for the live, and I don't know why it's not showing. Oh, there. It's delayed. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so back to my story. So there I was. And I had been this really just rebellious, hard-headed, stubborn, classic Taurus, just full of my own will, and I wasn't going to do it your way. And what had kept happening in my life was that by doing it my way and operating according to the programming that I had been giving, right? So side note, here's what I'm always talking about when I'm talking to you all about your codes and your programming and your beliefs. All of our experiences and our belief structures, they code us into certain ways of being, right? And these codes have us believing that certain behaviors and ways we are in the world are fixed, that we can't change them. So to make a long story short, there I was overnight. I was in Southern California. I burned my life to the ground. I had no idea what I was going to do. And all of a sudden, and you see this a lot when people get pushed to their limits, to the depths of whatever their limit is, right? We all have a different limit about how low we'll go and how much pain we'll tolerate before our soul quantum shifts us. And there's something magical that happens when we're in enough pain, when we're stuck enough, when we finally have that conscious realization of, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. Our soul will then jump in and perpetuate a quantum shift for us. But up until that moment of surrender, our soul, our galactic team, will not take away our free will. And this is why we see people going back into suffering, because it's not until we've had enough of our shit and the shit that we're creating, and we have that moment of, all right, you know what? I'm ready. Can I have some help? And whether that help, you ask for that help in the form of a prayer, of calling upon God, Jesus, angels, source, your soul, I don't care who you're calling on. In that moment, you give your soul permission to assist you with a quantum shift. And that is how and where. So in that moment, I had this quantum shift and I became this person who was all of a sudden ready, willing, and able to try it someone else's way. I all of a sudden became so open to teachers, to coaches, to healers, even therapists, 12-step programs, whatever it was, it didn't matter, right? I suddenly became open to realizing that I didn't have all the answers and that there were other people in the world who I was willing to open up to so that they could help me find some answers, so that they could share some answers. I found people who were living in a way that I wanted to be living. I found people who were doing the things that I wanted. And what that looked like for me was people who were, living in freedom. They had money around them. They were free to travel. They had great relationships, right? They were living in some level of purpose and fulfillment. I didn't change all that and then just find people who just were stuck in dead-end jobs and willing to settle into not living their dreams, because that wasn't for me. Right? And in that moment, I had a quantum evolution, a quantum shift into this higher version of myself who suddenly realized that I had been operating in a really small way. And let me tell you, let me paint you some pictures to explain to you how I was operating. And this is what we're going to talk about: 2D, 3D, 4D, and 5D. So in the second dimension, and this was me for a while in my life, I was like fucking 2D consciousness. When you're in 2D, you come to a line and you can't see right around this line because that's it. You're like, oh, I have a body now, right? Because 1D, you're like just this dot on paper and you can't really move. 2D, now you can like move like forward and backwards, but like, oh God. And if there's like two lines, now you're stuck. Now you're stuck. And that's the consciousness we're often operating in when we're locked in things like addiction or depression or anxiety or any of those chronic struggles, right? I had a quantum shift. I realized I quantum shifted to 3D. Now, oh, look, there's lines around me. But this version of me understood that I could go up or I could go down, I could go forward or I could go backward. I wasn't constricted by these lines. And so I started doing that. I quantum shifted again to 4D. And suddenly I realized that just because here there had been lines around me, there had been walls around me, and just because I had been living that way for 15 plus years, when I quantum shifted here, I was able to suddenly see that it didn't matter. Hi, Heather. Hey, Aja. Carla, I'm May 12th. I just realized it wasn't showing me your comments again. There we go. Now I'm blowing up. Hi, Christine. Yay! Making me happy. I thought I was wondering. I was like, can anybody hear me? When I quantum shifted here, I suddenly realized that just because I had been doing this for 33 years, suddenly I had the understanding that I could change whenever the fuck I wanted. Because it didn't matter. Because, and I'm sorry, someone was asking where my live is, so I'm just tagging her really quickly. Okay. The illusion of living in 3D tells us that because you've always been a teacher, aha, Heather, boom, you're going to be fucking having the ahas this week after your big breakthrough this morning, Heather. Proud of you. So in 3D, we're programmed to think that because we've always been a certain way, because our money reality has always looked a certain way, because I've always done a certain job, that's just going to be my reality forever. Have you ever gone through the course of a day and had your mood, maybe it started off great, like you were aligned, you felt empowered, you felt connected, and then like one thing happened after one thing happened and after one thing, and like all of a sudden by the end of the day, you were like all the way down here from where you started. Have you ever had that happen? Think about it, right? We do this because we think that logic is one of the traps of 3D. Well, oh, I got up this morning and I woke up a little bit late. Then I spilled my coffee. Then I freaking hit all the red lights on my way to the highway, on my way to work, right? What's happening, right? There's this connection between the way the events of the day are unfolding. When we begin to shift to 4D consciousness in its simplest form, it tells us that at any point in the day, it doesn't matter what happened for the previous 12 hours. It doesn't matter what or how long you've been doing anything. You can shift and change whenever the fuck you want. Right? And pardon me, I do sometimes drop some F-bombs for emphasis because I get excited about this. So when you're shifting to 4D consciousness, you begin to understand that yesterday doesn't matter. I'm not saying that all of the stuff from our past hasn't woven part of who we are. Of course it has, right? We don't just leave that alone. Like all of our experiences have shaped us. However, you get to choose every single day. And this is where like Joe Dispenza's stuff comes in, Abraham Hicks's stuff comes in, Florence Scovel Shinn, if you're into her, Basic Law of Attraction. You are starting anew every day. Scientifically, Joe Dispenza is proving when you wake up every morning, you have a clean slate, fresh slate. But because if you're not aware of the access to the 4D channel, right? Let's just pretend they're channels that we get to tune into. Let's just pretend that the dimensions of consciousness are channels that each and every day we wake up, and before you know you have a choice, you just plug into the same old channel every day. And this is what many of us have done for years. We think the same old thoughts, we get up and we do the same old things. Now, this is a function of the human design because it's meant to save us energy. It's meant to help us function, right? But then what happens is it becomes this autopilot program that keeps us locked in these routines. And then we wonder, Maybe we have a dream, and I know some of you, right? Some of you are already kind of establishing your own businesses. Some of you are feeling into your purpose. A few of you are doing the Wild Soul Freedom Shift with me, which starts in just a couple weeks. Yay, right? And that's what we're going to be tapping into, soul purpose and freedom and just coming back to remembering who the fuck you are, right? Quantum soul evolution. Some of you are still playing around with like, well, okay, what is my purpose? Like, I know I have one, right? Everybody's at a lot of different phases, and that's okay, right? Because wherever we are, we are. This isn't about like rushing the process, right? This is about enjoying the process. This is about me teaching so that those of you that are right here, right here, right here, right here, have the understandings that I had to stumble around in the dark to find, because when I was going through this, nobody was really talking about it. And I understand that I had to go through that so that I could talk about it, because this is part of my purpose. This is part of what I'm here to serve and give and teach, right? So by me having the experiences I had, I'm now able to pass this on to each and every one of you in a way that is easy to understand. So every single morning you're waking up with a fresh start, a clean slate. But if you are not making the conscious choice to plug into 4D, 5D, high vibe consciousness, and please note, this is not about spiritual bypassing or burying everything with positivity, right? It's about being real. It's about acknowledging that, yes, you will have emotions, you'll have bumps in the road, but at any given moment, it doesn't matter what just happened. I can choose where I go after that. Just because I dumped coffee in my lap this morning, I didn't, and that's just for example, doesn't mean I have to now be in a bad mood. I can choose. I do not have to operate according to my programmed, coded emotional responses, my pre-programmed coded emotional responses. Because let's just talk a little bit about our pre-programmed coded emotional responses. For everyone that is here, or whether you're live or watching the replay, please, if you feel open to it, share with me an emotional reaction that you know you are prone to falling into. That kind of hijacks you. Maybe it's your go-to. It's just something you know you go to, and you also know that it doesn't serve you to keep reacting to things in that way. For me, it was anger, right? Anger. I had all these like rejection stories and these inferiority stories playing out, all these codes telling me I'm not good enough. And if somebody's not fucking telling me, oh, that I'm not good enough. And I was, the comparing, all of the slave girl stuff, right? All of these belief systems that keep us limited and playing small. And every single day I was plugging into those because I didn't know that I was allowed to or able to recreate myself each and every day. Right? And part of what I got to do this past weekend when I was in New York with my coach is recreate myself yet again. Because in doing Kundalini immersions and hours of Kriyas and hi Joanne, you begin to tap into levels of energy in yourself that are yours. And it's steeped in your own truth and your own power. And it blasts through any of the false stuff that you've picked up along the way that's not really you. Right? And that's where then we can start dipping into 5D, which is where we understand. Oh, awesome, Joanne. Yay! No coincidences, right? So in 5D, we can start to understand that we have all this support. We have a galactic team, our soul. Like I talked to you guys in the beginning story, right? When we take that moment of asking for help or surrender, we call upon something outside of our own fucking ego. That is when our soul and our galactic team can step in and assist us to quantum shift. Have you ever, hi Candace, had an experience where you loved an alcohol? This is one of my favorite ones. It's like one we can almost all relate to, where you loved an alcohol and you drank too much of it and got really sick. Anybody ever have that experience? I know I have, right? Or perhaps food. There was a food you loved and you got food poisoning from eating it. Like maybe you loved shrimp and then One time you got food poisoning, and the food poisoning was so volatile and so painful, you woke up the next day and you've never touched shrimp again, because even though it was your favorite food. Anybody ever have that experience, or is it just me, right? Give me a yes in the comments if you've had that experience, right? Yes, of course. We've all had something like it. That is like a tiny little example of a quantum shift, right? This experience caused me pain. Holy fucking shit, I'm never doing that again. And you go from being a version of yourself who loved that thing, or, drank that thing or ate that thing all the time, right, Heather? Yep. To another version of yourself who wasn't going to touch it. That, my friends, is a quantum shift in its simplest form. All we're talking about when we're talking about the quantum is going down to the simplest form, right? Quantum mechanics and quantum physics and quantum science is all about getting down to the tiniest particles of matter and seeing how they behave. So quantum particles and electrons, and there's all this cool stuff they're doing. I'm not here to talk to you about the science of it. I'm here to explain that it's playing out for us every single day, and it's playing out for you whether you want to admit it or not. And this is where Joe Dispenza's stuff comes in really coolly, because he is medically and scientifically explaining how quantum soul evolution works. He's explaining how the work that I do works. So if you want the science behind what I do, go and read Joe Dispenza. And then once your science brain is convinced, you can come over and learn more from me. I'm happy for you to do it that way, right? If you're kind of like, man, I'm not really sure about what Lindsay's talking about yet. I get it. Because at first, this can be kind of like, because remember, the logic and the illusion of 3D, us, wants to think that this is it. And we've thought that this was it for the whole time. So when we start to dip a toe into this idea that, oh my God, what? Just because I've always lived in a square doesn't mean I have to live in a square anymore? Are you kidding me? What does that even mean? Just because I've always conducted myself, well, I can change? Like, that can be, I'm joking about it, but please understand, I respect that it can be very uncomfortable and scary for the ego mind. Because the ego mind is very attached to whatever you're claiming for yourself as your identity. And this is why the pieces of identity recoding are such an important part in the Wild Soul Freedom Matrix, right? For those of you that did the whole webinar with me last week, by the way, I'm having the webinar again in a few days. I'll post all the details later. I'm going to do it again live because it was so powerful. I feel like I want to do it again live for everybody. So we're going to be doing it again live. If you already attended it, you're more than welcome to join in again, because remember, they are channeled, so you'll get different information every time. Definitely invited. Come. If you're not, come, right? You want to know more about this? We're going to go deep. The identity codes are part of the Wild Soul Freedom Matrix because we are taught in the way that we live in 3D that it's not okay to change. Did anybody ever shift identities in high school? Yeah. I know I did. In high school, I went from being, about 7th grade, I started to shift. I had another quantum shift, right? I went from being this studious, good girl, athlete, speaking of which, here's a photo of me, that fell out of a book the other day when we were unpacking a box in the garage. Look at me. Wasn't I cute? So that was me, my cheerleader days. I think I was 7th or 8th grade in that one. And right after that year, I shifted into the rebellious version of myself, and I started doing poor in school. I started getting in trouble in school. I started smoking cigarettes, and I went full punk rock, skateboarder, snowboarder, rebel without a cause. I had to quit all my sports because in high school, identity was a real thing, right? Can anybody relate? Give me a yes in the comments if you can relate. My identity as a punk rocker was not going to be accepted if I was still over here playing softball and trying to do cheerleading and gymnastics. And I had to choose. Heather, I had to choose. And I chose the rebel punk rocker. And that followed me around until 34 when I quantum shifted again into somebody who was open to evolving and maturing. Okay, but just because I shifted didn't mean I didn't have to do some work around my identity coding and programming, because I still had coding and programming within me that was like, oh, if you're this way, you can't be that way. And I began really getting into yoga and meditation. And I was really kind of into a lot. I was studying a lot of Buddhism. And I really like was becoming, you know, that kind of identity. And so I had to really self-search when I started my business, because I had all these hangups as this yogi identity. Like, can I really be in business? Am I structured enough? Am I disciplined enough? Is it okay for me to have money? So I had to start questioning all these deeply embedded beliefs I had around who I was in the world. And now I'm happy to say that I am happy to shift every other week. If I need to shift a part of my identity to better serve you all, I'm happy to do that. And that's what I'm doing. That's why I work with the coaches that I work with, right? Because every time I work with them, or I do group coaching with them, or I'm on one of our trainings, or I'm working through their content for their courses that I'm taking, I am shifting, I am growing, I am evolving, because I have big dreams and I have a purpose. And I know a lot of you have big dreams and a purpose, right? And I know it can be scary. I get that it can be scary to know and have a calling. And Heather, you're going to relate with this because of the video I sent you this morning, The Hero's Journey, right? And so we do this thing where like we're called and something starts to lead us. And then we're like, hey, no, and we scramble backwards, right? Because we're not sure. Maybe we don't feel like we're ready. It's easier to stay comfortable. But guess what happens? The call is going to keep coming around to us until we answer it. And I'm going to tell you all right now that my theory on why humanity is suffering so deeply and in so much pain, addiction, suicide, depression, chronic illnesses, is because people are not answering the call of their heart and soul. And to continue to ignore the call of your beautiful gifts and purpose is to just live in pain. And when we get in enough pain, what do? We have to reach for stuff to get ourselves out of pain. And that's where the addiction, the chronic pain, illnesses, and the diseases and depression and all this stuff comes from, right? We can go to doctors and we can medicate it all we want. That's why the Wild Soul Freedom Matrix covers body, mind, emotions, and soul, because we are multi-layered, complex beings, right? To treat something medically and only treat it medically, to go to the gym because you want to get healthy and only go to the gym, but not change anything else in your mind, your emotions, or your soul, you're only reaching one layer, and those results will never be sustainable, right? When we hit all 4 layers, that's when we quantum shift. That's when you see people like, holy shit, overnight you just changed. Overnight you became a whole different person. It's because the change that they enacted, they allowed them to lock in body, mind, emotion, soul, launches them into 4D, 5D. And that's where it gets really fun, because that's where you get to consciously choose who you're going to be each and every day. You get to consciously choose which channel you're plugging into each and every day. And I'm going to share a Joe Dispenza video here later today for you all, for those of you that are, really feeling this and you're really into it, because he's a doctor and a neurologist and a scientist, and he's got medical data to back all this up. I just love. So here's this man who had this calling to bring these teachings to the world. And as a, respected doctor, he was getting a lot of flack in the beginning of sharing this stuff, because all the other doctors and scientists were calling it pseudoscience. And he reached a really low point where he was questioning, do I really want to do this? Can I do this? Can I take this? And then he had this crazy transcendental experience, and he understood that this has been his mission for lifetimes. And if he didn't do it this time and he backed down and he allowed himself to be silenced again, like he had in previous lifetimes, guess what was going to happen? He was going to fail humanity, and he was going to have to repeat the lesson. And after that moment, he committed, right? And look what happens now. He's healing people. And he has the medical data to show that when you do this stuff on the quantum level, it fucking works. Tell me that's pseudoscience when he is shifting people out of the lowest, he's not doing it, but his teachings, what he's channeling through is leading them to it. It's within them. But the stories and the evidence and the scientific data he has to back up what we're doing is phenomenal. So I'm going to share some of that for you guys later today. Just for those of you that are science-minded or logical or want some kind of evidence, I'm cool with that. I get it. Right? You're here, you're listening to this, so that means there's a seed growing. There's a nice little baby plant growing in there, a nice little baby 4D seed growing in your mind. I love it. For those of you that truly love this, right? It's like dogs. They got 4D and 5D on lock. Just because you yelled at them for chewing up the trash 5 minutes ago, 5 minutes later, they ain't mad at you. They did something wrong and maybe they kind of look sheepishly when they get busted, right? But 3 seconds later, they're like, oh, okay, mom's not mad at me anymore. He can never be mad at you, right, buddies? He can't be mad at you. He's recreating himself in every moment. That's why animals are so able to live in the moment, right? So I've given you all a lot to think about today. Quantum shifts. Are you ready for one? Give me a guess if you're ready for one. Those of you watching the replay too. Right? This is beautiful work. For those of you that want to know more, stay tuned because I will be sharing some awesome information today. I'll be giving you guys information on the next training, the full webinar training on the Wild Soul Freedom Matrix, right? We're going to go deep. The Wild Soul Freedom Shift program is launching and I am like fucking excited because this has been months in the birthing process, months. Heather, you've been around me for all that. Candace, you've been around me for months now. You guys know, right? This has been coming forth for like months and now is the time. Can you feel my excitement? Today is the equinox. Fall for some of us, for my people down under, it's just the spring equinox for you. Where no matter where you are in the world, it's a day of transition, it's a day of balance, it's a day of reflection. Traditionally, this was the second harvest of our ancestors, right? So it was really important that they were harvesting enough food to make it through winter, through the time that it wasn't the planting season. Down under, you're coming into spring, so it's now becoming the planting season. So it's about a time of really reflecting on what have you harvested this year? What do you want to plant this year? What do you want to work? What are you shedding as fall comes? What are you harvesting? And really taking responsibility for what's showing up in your life. So I love each and every one of you. And again, if you're catching this as the replay, if you have any questions, please share with me. Share with me what you loved. Those of you that are here live, share with me what you loved. Heather, I know you had a few ahas. Some other reviews have been in and out, and that's okay, right? But yeah, let me know. I love to hear what you guys loved and what you guys had ahas about, because that then helps me to know what else I can create content and trainings for you guys on. So when you share, you're helping me and you're also helping the other members of this group to have their own shifts, right? Hey, Tatiana. So I ask you to go forward today on the equinox and think about what's next for me? What do I want for myself? What am I ready to shed as I step into and embrace my own 4D consciousness? And not just what do I want to shed, but who do I want to become? Who am I choosing to show up and fucking be in the world? Because I know, I see your hearts. I see your gifts. And I know that there's some beautifully powerful people here who are meant for amazing fucking things. And I want to assist you in that journey. I hope you all have a beautiful, beautiful day. Remember, be wildly you and have it all. I'll see you soon. And we will also have our regular Friday weekly Wild Visionary training this coming Friday. Have a beautiful, beautiful Monday. Be you, be wildly you, and love yourself. I'll see you all soon.